Red, what's it?
Red Hot Conservative.
Red Hot Conservative, you can find a whole lot of information on it. And actually, one of our members, mother's the one that uncovered it, around the Round Rock area when she was doing tutoring. And over the last couple of years, they basically been doing flag waving and have taken it up to where they've had hearings in the Senate, Texas State Senate now. So we'd highly encourage you to get familiar with that, and you can talk to Jay probably a lot more about it.
Okay.
And man, I had a
Okay.
question and I don't forgot it.
Larry, or wait. am I
It was
wrong?
supposed to be me, but then I forgot
I'm
my
sorry.
question. I got
Okay, yeah.
I remember mine.
Too bad, too late, too bad.
Hey,
That's your chance, it's your only chance. You don't have another question there?
no, I had.
She'll
real
pass
quick
this
one.
round.
Dennis,
pass
go
this
for it.
round.
Okay.
Well, you know, you talked a lot about some user fees a while ago, and a lot of people think that one of the problems is that we have user fees, but they don't go to support, you know, the issue that they're.
The
taxed for,
service,
like
yeah.
Gas, taxes, hunting,
Yeah.
and fishing licenses. We need some legislation, I think, to mandate that those fees used that way, and then things that don't have fees to support them need to come from general revenue. So are you on board with doing something like that?
No, yeah, for years that has irritated me greatly, that every time I go out and buy a hunting and fishing license, I know that the vast majority of it does not go to support hunting and fishing. It doesn't even really go to support conservation or anything, it goes into the general revenues. And I would very much be on board with restricting. I mean, my feeling is you're lying to the public if you're saying, hey, we got a gas tax here to build your roads, and then, you know, you use it for something else. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, my satellite bill not too long ago, which should have been 2 or 3 lines, I complained to the PUC that it was 87 items, user fees and little taxes and stuff like that. And it's gone on for years, widespread, it couldn't get much more widespread. So it's gonna take somebody with the staff and with the motivation and the passion to dig that stuff out, to turn it around. So that's kind of what we're looking for somebody to do.
With that, you had mentioned, I think before that, you do like consumption fees, and you wouldn't necessarily mind an increase in the gas tax to cover.
To replace
road-
property tax.
To replace
That was
property
the premise.
taxes.
Well, yeah.
Can you clarify that, because that's kind of a contradiction a little bit.
Well, no, to my mind, the gas tax, for instance, should be for building roads and infrastructure. You know, not necessarily, just roads alone, but there are, you know, in some cases, it's valuable to have bus service, that sort of thing.
So would you fight and introduce legislation to make that happen? Make that, you know, you said that's lying to the public. Would you basically introduce legislation in every case across the board to make sure that whatever is taxed under that category, like gas taxes, goes to roads and transportation?
Probably the way I would approach it is more of a piecemeal, okay? I would start here and try and get, for instance, the gas tax to be solely used for transportation issues. Then I would move on to the next thing, rather than, I think the odds of getting something global passed are much lower.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, question number 13, having to do with, if you want to call it, portability of funds for education.
Right.
You said you support this with limits. But I think, as I read your answer, you were probably thinking only of from one public school to another public school. Would you also support that those funds are portable to private schools?
That they follow the student
Right.
Or homeschool?
or homeschool.
That was my next question. Let him answer the first one.
Okay, guys.
Are you talking about, for instance, like the $2,000 or so that each school gets per student?
Right.
2,000?
Or, yeah,
It's more, but
it's more now.
it's like 10,000 a student in Montgomery
Like,
County
per year?
per year.
Yeah, okay. One of the problems that I would foresee with that is that a large part of that goes to issues like bus service and things like that, okay? Not just education in the classroom. I would have to take a hard look at that. I don't have a problem with, for instance, teacher funds, following the student, but you get into issues of separation of church and state and all that kind of stuff when you're talking about private schools and that sort of
Only if you have the modern version of church and state.
Well, no, charter schools are completely state funded, and most of those are religious.
Yes.
The one in the Woodlands, Vista Academy, is a Christian charter school. There is quite a few, I forget how many, it's close to a dozen Muslim charter schools in Texas. It's all state funded. There's no local property tax, but it's from the state.
Mhm.
That's already being done.
Yeah, and I got a problem.
No
there.
core
I got
no
a
core
problem.
challenges on it.
Yeah, I got a problem there, I gotta be honest. I mean,
Well, what's the basis of your objection in terms of the church involvement?
my view of separation of church and state means that the church is over here and it can, it runs its business as it sees fit, without state interference, but also without state support. And when you're asking everybody around here to pay taxes to support, this church over here, that's when I start having a problem.
Well, even if it's really just the church performing education.
I'm a product of parochial schools, and it's not just education. Okay?
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Well, the public schools is not either.
I would
They
agree
push
with
their own
that.
form
but-
of religion
but,
in public schools.
I mean, nevertheless, I have I would have a hard time supporting
Okay.
that. I mean, just simply because I don't feel it is fair for us to have to support, Confucianism, Islam, Buddhism, all that stuff.
All right. I have, were you done with your question?
Yeah, everything,
and
and all
Actually,
the other questions.
well, let me
too,
jump into
that
this
they asked
then.
for me.
Let me jump into this. And of course, when it comes to state expenditures, I'm going to talk about a law enforcement issue, and that deals with the fact that we spend so much money dealing with arresting people that are marijuana users. And we know some states are moving away from that. So my question is, when you look at the expense, the jail time, putting someone in jail, introducing them to the criminal element and that sort of thing, as a state, do we want to move towards legalization of marijuana, or you really think we still need to spend all the money on the drug war, so to speak, only where marijuana is concerned? And should we add alcohol to that if we want to continue the drug war?
I do a lot of criminal defense work,
Uh-huh.
and almost all the assault, family violence, many of the little petty crimes are the result of alcohol. I mean,
So you'd want to make that illegal, or you think marijuana doesn't do that, so we should legalize it?
I think,
Usually they're too stoned to fight if they're
yeah,
smoking pot,
Here he is trying to get his legal questions answered again.
yeah. I think
I'm
that,
not a pot user.
Why did you put it on the credit card?
Ignore them. You can answer the question.
He's done the same thing to JP candidates too, trying to curry favor.
something like that to loosen up on the marijuana laws, I think that would have to go to a statewide vote, in my opinion.
So you'd want to offer it for
Yeah,
like
I
a
wouldn't-
proper proposition or something.
I mean, one of the issues that I have with the current district attorney is that they're sending a lot more people to prison now
Uh-huh.
than what they used to.
Meaning for
That's-
drug use?
Yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do believe that many of those offenders could be on probation, and instead of us paying $75,000 or $80,000 a year to harbor them, up at the
Right.
penitentiary, they could be productive. They get their shot. If they make it, fine. If they don't, well, then send them.
Well, then, is there time left? Then,
9, 8
No,
seconds.
not for you.
7,
Okay.
6,
ask
5,
me.
4,
Okay.
3.
All right, so
Sister.
how familiar are you with leadership in Austin right now, particularly with Joe Strauss and issues surrounding that?
Somewhat. I certainly am no expert on it, but I know there have been some issues.
Right. So it's basically at the federal level. We're all familiar with this kind of division between, say, the Ted Cruz sort of representative and the Boehner type representative.
Right.
And at the state level, we have a similar issue with Joe Strauss, who's the Speaker of the House and who has appointed committee chairs and have effectively bottled up a lot of good conservative legislation within committees. So they never reaches to vote.
Right.
So I guess what's your take on that, and how do we address that? Where do you put yourself in that range of?
Do you want a speaker that feels the need to curry favor with the Democrats?
Not particularly. I mean, that's,
Or that even raises campaign funds for Democrats?
yeah, that was one of the things that bothered me. One of the problems that we have with the way it's set up, of course, the longer you're there, the more stroke you have, okay? And so that in some ways is good, but in some ways it's really bad. I think that whoever the speaker is, he has to look at his constituency, in other words, the representatives that are there, and make the determination as to how he acts based on who his constituents are. I mean, who put him there. And that's something that he would have to be very much aware of, I think, in this next session.
Well, so can Joe Strauss count on your vote?
Not at this point in time.
Okay.
I mean, I'd have to sit there and,
Well, some
Depends
said
on
they
who
don't
all the
know him, and
candidates
it's like,
are.
well, come on, you have to get to know. You look
Yeah.
at what the guy's done.
yeah, I mean, it depends on who the alternate candidates are.
Yeah.
But that's, I certainly would be going up there being lockstep with him at this point
Okay.
in time.
He eliminates alternate candidates.
I was confused if that was Ken's question or whose question.
That's Ken's. That's Ken's.
Ken's and-
That was an extension.
I'm just the voice
Yeah.
of Ken.
Right. And Dale, and.
Hold on.
Use your mind and your
And we're at
buttons,
the,
right?
we're at the 30-minute point of questions. Along that line, over the years, there's been many representatives that elect, go to Austin as a freshman, and they get caught up they go over there with strong feelings and strong beliefs, and their sophomore year, they're swaying, they're turning, well, I can get on the committee if I'll just not be as firm a conservative as I was, or as I still am, but yeah, I want that, it'd be to the benefit of the constituents to get me on that committee. So I can kind of sway and maybe not be as conservative in a couple of issues to get on a committee. Explain the rights or wrongs of that.
That obviously is a question of balance there. I mean, in a system like we have, you don't get everything you want all the time. There's compromise in everything that comes out of Austin. There's compromise in everything that comes out of Washington. So that is something that each individual, I think, representative is going to have to look at and say, well, how far can I compromise on this issue? And in many cases, it might not be very much. I mean, because most of these issues I feel very strongly about. But I also know that, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, I'm not going to change everything in one session up there. It's you have a long game there, not a short game. that you have to be focused on. But I do think that I understand absolutely what you're talking about, because I have seen that with, our elected representatives all over the country. And I think you need to, if you're gonna send somebody, you wanna send somebody who is fairly well set in, their beliefs and how they do business.
Reach
rather-
across the aisle occasionally, just to,
Well, you're gonna have to work across the aisle, I mean, unless we have an absolute majority up there. Now,
We do.
we do right
we got
now,
a super majority.
Yeah,
That's
right
what
now we
That's
do.
what Tea Party
Uh-huh.
grassroots put in.
right,
And we're
And-
still not seeing it.
well, and
We're
that's a
seeing-
problem,
We're seeing Democrats put in
yeah,
to positions, and we see Republican women's groups here complaining that the Tea Party was, or Rick Green, in their
Mhm.
first debate, was forcing the issue to these candidates. They got all upset about that.
well, when you have a super majority, I think that entitles you to push your own agenda,
That's right.
I mean, that's the way it is.
And
The people have spoken, they've put you in there, and I believe that everybody that goes to Austin knows what the folks want now.
Well, okay, so with that, if you had a choice, Cornyn, Ted Cruz, who would you pick?
I'm much more of a Cruz fan than I am a Cornyn fan.
Do you like what he did on his, well, it wasn't really a filibuster, but
It was a traditional filibuster. Okay. As far as an attention-getting act, it certainly got national attention to it. And I think that was effective, just to show the insiders up there that, hey, let's talk about outside the Beltway, because that's where the votes are. Okay.
yeah.
And I think it was very valuable from that aspect. We knew when he started that it, wasn't gonna go anywhere, but, I think it was a very smart, way to draw attention to, what's puzzling the vast majority of the country out here.
And do you think it was, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, it was self-centered, it was all about him. Even a lot of Republicans, McCain and Graham and, Boehner, all thought it was self-centered.
I can see why they would say that, because that's how they think, okay? But I don't think that it was just for his personal aggrandizement at all.
Mhm.
I mean, I could be wrong about that, because I don't know him personally, but, I mean, what I know of him, it was an attention-getting act for the political situation, not the personal.
Okay. W, conservative,
No?
but you supported him. And nobody said so on the federal level.
I voted for him, yes.
Okay.
Look at the alternative.
Yeah, well, there was that.
What's that?
Look at the alternative.
Yeah.
Well,
I was, after what he and the Republican majority Congress did, that was the last time I gave money to the Republicans. Okay?
welcome to the club.
Yeah.
I have heard said, and I have read, that Strauss is staying speaker and staying in the House until we get legalized casino gambling in the state of Texas. How do you feel about having casinos in the state of Texas?
I'm not a gambler, okay? I've been to Vegas maybe twice in 50+ years, 58 years. And I have played a slot machine or two, so to me, I could care less about casino gambling. It does not interest me whatsoever. I mean, I'm not dying to have one.
You see any negatives about it coming to Texas?
Oh, yeah. I don't think that would be a positive thing for us, but, I know it's very fashionable now. They have it over in, Louisiana, and I've heard a lot of people say, well, look at all that money going to Louisiana and that sort of thing. I don't see it as a, particularly state-controlled gambling, I don't see that as a viable way to raise funds.
If it does happen, would it be a negative plus? I mean, negative. Would it be a net plus or a net minus in terms of what it brings and what it takes away?
Financially.
Financially, thank you, yes.
You know, years ago, they had that down in Galveston, and it was terrible for that town. Wasn't legal, sort of, but they had gambling down there, and it didn't do anything but ruin that town. I don't think it would be a plus, personally. It brings jobs, but it also brings lots of other problems. So
Just personal problems or other issues?
Oh, you go around, it fosters a mentality that I think is not one that, I mean, it's a get-rich-quick type mentality, which is not how you get ahead in this country. I mean,
One last question.
Are you familiar with what the Texas and/or U.S. Constitution has to say about separation of church and state?
Yeah, I would say so.
Have you seen the words in the Constitution?
Oh, yeah. It's been a while since I looked at the Texas Constitution.
Well, let me get to the other question. You know,
But the words aren't in the Constitution.
the strict
As
question.
far as
It's a trick
separation of church and state,
Yeah, those words are not in there.
The liberals have convinced people that that's a constitutional issue, and it's not mentioned there, it's not mentioned in the Declaration. Generally, it's based on kind of an off-the-cuff comment that Jefferson made.
To the
But
Danbury
they've,
Baptists.
yeah, they've convinced us that there's a constitutional issue there, but there's not.
I was gonna say, they certainly taught that in
They've done-
constitutional law.
They've done a good job of it, haven't they?
Yeah.
That's probably where most of it came from.
That's kind of scary.
A year or two ago, the taxpayers voted no on some bonds for the county, which included some specific funding for roads and things. And after the voters said no, the county commissioners went basically behind their backs and used an act that the legislator had provided them with to circumvent the will of the voters.